So I recently moved studios into this 1,300 square foot basement, and this is the first time I've worked with somebody else to get the acoustic treatment done. Let me tell you how it went. A little bit of context here. I've worked in both commercial, project, and home studios over the last 15 years now. Holy cow. Most of the home studio and project studios, I have been responsible for the acoustic treatment, which meant watching a lot of DIY acoustic panel videos and just stretching together some Joann's fabric over some insulation on some cheap pine wood from Home Depot and just kind of winging it. The last home studio that I was in was the first time where I used a different type of acoustic treatment for my bonus room setup at my house. And that was the fabric wall stretch system. And that was an interesting and cool experience to go through. It's almost invisible treatment. However, because of the shape of that room and because there was a stairwell and the treatment was all just maybe 2 inches thick, just up on the walls, it was definitely not perfect in the high mids and in the low frequencies. So in this move, the main space where we're listening is a lot bigger, and it is also not a perfect room. You know, it's a basement. So this is essentially like a living room space. It has a fireplace, there's like a stairwell back there, a little cavity, there's a hallway over there. So I needed to get creative with how we were gonna go about treating this, as well as there's a separate room for tracking, recording drums and other live instruments, and we wanted to treat that room as well. Now this is where the company Music City Acoustics comes in. Now, if you've watched my other channel, it's just called Andrew Masters, there's hundreds of these epic home studio tours on them, and a lot of these studios were all treated by this company, Music City Acoustics. So I reached out to Graham, who owns that company, and learned a little bit about what the process would be like to work with them. I gotta share it with you, it's pretty amazing. So spoiler alert, they treated this whole studio. We worked out a deal for this YouTube channel and for these videos. I still wanna share with you how that went and what the results are like. In the beginning, what Graham does is dependent upon 2 things, whether you are local and they are coming to you, or whether you live somewhere else and you're gonna be working remotely together. In our case, we're local, actually like 4 minutes away. So Graham came over here, actually took measurements of the whole room, created a rendering of the space of each room that we were gonna be treating, and then built out how we would lay out the floor plan of the room, and then different ways that we could approach treating it. Now, there was a couple things that I wanted for this room. One, there's a nice big window here, and I wanted my desk to be centered on the window, which essentially creates this extra little space over here, which is kind of like a hallway, to be an open path. And I wanted the listening spot to almost feel like its own separate space. And because of the stairway and because of that little cavity back there and just the uneven walls and things, I wanted to go with something that could be a little more standalone. So Graham recommended we go with some freestanding gobos. Now, I think this is one of the greatest parts of what makes this control room sound great. So we have 2 different freestanding gobos on each side of the listening station. Above us are 2 large clouds. And a couple cool things about these gobos is on one side, it's absorptive, and on the other side, it is not reflective, but more of like a diffusion. It has pegboard, white pegboard, that allows the air to go through and get kind of trapped in there. If you want to use it for tracking, you can flip it around and have that diffusion reflection surface, or if you want to use it as a bass trap, how we're using it, you can use the fabric side. A couple things about these traps is they are absolutely beautiful. They're pretty big. Again, there's 2 different sizes. The one closest to the wall is a bit narrower, and then the one after it is wider. I want to say that's probably 3 feet, and this one's probably 4 feet wide. I would imagine they're both 6 feet, but they are on these cool feet with casters, so you can actually wheel them around or lock them in place. This has proven to be incredibly useful for this kind of setup where things are kind of changing. Sometimes we got to get back somewhere and you need to move it, and you can put it back. It's really, really functional. Now, behind this immediate area on the ceiling, we have 8 more traditional absorption panels. We have these 2x4 by 2 inch thick panels that are attached to the ceiling. And then in front of them, we have these 2x2 panels. And these are scattered and placed in just a way where it's kind of breaking up the ceiling drywall in it, but it's not too much. Now, the thing that I didn't love about my previous home studio is the fabric wall actually felt like too much absorption. Like you could turn your speakers so loud and it didn't really feel that loud. Like it was absorbing so much of the volume of the room that it just didn't feel super balanced and full. Where when we set up speakers in this room, I could not believe how much more I could hear. It feels like a cliche to say that, wow, I've never heard this part of a song before. I never heard this element of the mix. That was happening left and right. Every single person that we brought through to sit and listen was stunned. I have not done a room measurement, which I would really love to do, but one of my sort of hack ways of testing is using the subsynth and just going from like a middle C all the way down and just listening for volume dips in the mix position. Now, obviously this is not a non-scientific way, but I noticed that there was certainly dips in my last room where some notes were a lot quieter than other notes, and here it just sounds amazing. The low end is extremely tight, and the mixes just all sound huge. It sounds full, it doesn't sound loud, it doesn't sound reflective. They did an absolutely great job. They also came and installed all of these panels. So they built everything back at their factory. And if you live here, then you can go through the same process where you work with Graham to design the layout of your studio and then pick out which panels you're gonna want, where you're gonna want them. You can obviously pick out the fabric color. And again, if you're not local, then they will build them all in their shop and then ship them to you. And the prices are very reasonable. From the beginning, Graham said he wanted to build a company that can make acoustic treatment attainable and affordable for people. And I think he did a really excellent job. This is not like, you know, some of the studio designers who've been doing it for 30 years who charge 30 grand for a design. Graham works with you in the front end completely for free. So if you're remote, you can actually send pictures, you can send measurements, and you can work with him to actually come up with a design for your room and pick the correct treatment and so on. So that's the front, the ceiling, and then now the back of the listening room, we have 3 more panels. There's one main bass trap in the center of the rear of the room above the couch. It's looks like 6 feet by 4 feet, just about the same size as this cloud. And it is actually mounted away from the wall. There's like a good 10 inches probably between the wall and that bass trap. And then the bass traps in the back are all 6 inches deep. So this is really the first home studio or project studio setup I've been in that's had the closest thing to real bass trapping. And clearly it has a huge effect. So there's that main 6x4 bass trap panel mounted off of the wall in the back. And then we went with 2 more freestanding bass trap or gobos, if you will. These are actually 2 foot by 6 foot. They're freestanding, but they have little legs that don't have casters. So these are just meant to sit in place and not be moved around. I mean, you can move them around. They're not that heavy, but they're sturdy so that they don't fall on the feet. It was awesome watching them put all this stuff together. And if I didn't have them install it, I would imagine it wouldn't be that complicated to install myself. Certainly prefer to have them do it because this is what they do. They're professionals at it. And they've got the system down for doing a great install and making sure everything is level. I mean, that's a big part of when you start to add a lot of clouds and treatment on the ceiling and on the walls. It's all gotta be level, it's all gotta be straight, and it's all gotta work together with the room, which if I were to do it, things would look a little more crooked. I mean, I'm not good at right angles and things like that. So, okay, so now let's talk about the tracking room. So the tracking room, I wanted to create almost a different feeling of a space. Like you're out here, there's a feeling to being in this room. The walls are all light. We have some of these LEDs that give little pops of color. There's space. You know, it feels really good. There's an accent wall on the back, but there's not too much darkness. We went with some darker colors. I got black on the clouds here. The gobos are a graphite color. That's the name of it. It looks pretty dark, but it really depends on the lighting in the room because they actually looked kind of green when we were in the factory because the lights are more of a daylight colored lights and these are more of a tungsten warmer. In this room, against a white wall, they all look pretty dark. But I wanted this room to feel open and I wanted the tracking room to feel more of like a special space that you're in and you're performing and you're not distracted. And it also doesn't necessarily feel like a model home in there. So we went with the same color I used on the accent wall, which is the very navy. It's a bare paint. We did all the walls. It is very navy in there. And then we used the graphite color on the panels in that room. So on the walls, all the panels are the same graphite color, which keeps it kind of dark and moody. But what I love is Graham had them put on these diffusion faces over every other absorption panel in there. So it really breaks it up. And then on the ceiling, we just went with more of these lighter panels. These are the shadow color fabric. And we just covered as much of the ceiling as we could without covering the lights in the room. So there's still plenty of light in the room. There's a couple windows. So even though the walls are dark, it feels really nice and really comfortable in there. And then the extra layer, which I did not expect, that I think is a game changer for the sound, is on the ceiling they built and mounted this scatter face diffuser. Now, I don't know that much about diffusers. I've never really cared. I've always been more of like a tracking engineer who's just like, get it up, get the mic on it, we'll get the sound, we'll figure it out. So I stay out of the forums of people who's dedicated their lives to this kind of stuff. But they put the scatter face diffuser up there. And first off, I'm a visual person. Looks unbelievable. The whole room aesthetically feels so comfortable and so inviting for whoever's performing in there. It's a really special place to actually record and perform in. Now the sound of it, I'm a drummer and I base the sound of the room off of playing drums. It is such a priority for me. And as a recording engineer and producer, like one of the things that I think makes a special drum recording is the sound of the space that you're in. The room that you're in, obviously everything else comes into play, but the room contributes a lot to the drum sound, and it can contribute in a positive way or a negative way. Now, because we put so many panels on the wall and on the ceiling in this tracking room, I was pretty sure that it was gonna sound pretty dead, because we also have a couple rugs in there, right? So we got a couple rugs, absorption panels in the ceilings, absorption panels all the way around the walls. I thought it was gonna be pretty dead sounding. But when I first hit that kick drum, it sounded
huge.
It didn't sound like a drywalled bedroom. It didn't sound like a big open tracking room, but it sounded
big,
which is crazy. Part of the idea with this tracking room, at least with recording drums, was to be able to leave that door cracked, put some mics in the hallway, and be able to record the close mics in the room, and then have some microphones out in the hallway to get some other room effect mics, which those also sounded fantastic. We moved them around, we did some testing with that, but I'm not gonna get into that. The acoustic treatment in the room allowed for the drums to actually sound open and big, but at the same time controlled. Really, really impressed and really, really happy with how it turned out and how it sounds in there, and it feels good, looks good. They did an excellent job. Okay, so let's jump back to the process. The process is you basically go to the website, reach out to the company, tell them about the space. If you're local, you can have them come work with you, build out a design of it. If you're not local, you can do it over the internet via email, go back and forth on the design and get prices for all of the things. They will work with you on getting at least the studio started and getting treatment into your hands. This whole setup is such an overkill, crazy setup because this, again, is a 1,300 square foot basement. We went all out. There's a lot of treatment here. This is probably far more than most people would ever get in their home studio. And the whole thing with the installation price came out to $11,000. The installation price is pretty significant. I mean, there's 3 guys here. They were here all day installing this. And of course, those guys are all getting paid, but they put a lot of work and a lot of care into it. So let's go through the costs here. The costs of supplies alone. So buying these completely finished built panels, which includes in this room, 8 of these ceiling mounted clouds, 2 of the 6x4 clouds, 4 of the giant gobos, 2 of them 6x4, 2 of them 3x4, the rear walls, the bass traps on the back, this extra panel over here, all of that material completely finished with no installation comes out to $5,172 for this whole control room. Now, if you've built some of these on your own, you might be thinking I could do it for less. But when you've done it before and you go to buy this stuff, especially the insulation, you got to get it from like a bulk manufacturer. Fabric's not cheap. Building the frames, and you got to have all the tools and then all the time. It's not going to come out to much less than that. I do a lot of consultations with people who are building studios. I've built several studios on my own. That's a remarkably good price. So again, all of the treatment for the entire control room, a little over, I'll say $5,200, I'll round up. And then the tracking room, all of the treatment in the tracking room, which there's a lot. All the ceiling treatment, all the wall panels, the diffuser faces that hang on the panels, and that giant scatter diffuser on the ceiling all come out to a total of just under $3,000. $2,936 is what's on the quote. So the full treatment for the entire tracking room, under $3,000. The full treatment for the entire control room, under $5,200. Then the installation, if you're like me and you would just rather professionals come in and do it, the installation of all the treatment in the control room, $1,300. And then the tracking room came out to a little over $1,100. So they knocked this whole thing out in one day. There is a lot of stuff. Again, this is kind of like a really intense project studio, home studio setup. So most people probably aren't going to want or need this much stuff in their space. If you think about that, and the cost of whatever you're setting up is probably going to be much, much lower. And the fact that they work with you on the design
For free?
building and planning this whole thing out for you. No one else does that. That is, I actually told Graham, you should charge for this. Like, this is a great deal you're doing for people. So yeah, again, the whole total of everything came out to just over $11,000 with installation, all the panels, all the supplies, everything done for me. Just over $11,000, which is a big number. But again, if you've done any work in professional audio or professional studios, or you've ever had a conversation with a studio designer, that is not even half the price of what a design would cost, with no materials, no labor, no installation, nothing. So absolutely fantastic work from Music City Acoustics. I was really impressed, thoroughly convinced that this is the best studio they've done. I mean, this room sounds, both rooms, tracking room and this control room, but it is such a pleasure to work on music and listen to music in here. It feels so good, sounds amazing. Really, really happy with it. So I'm gonna put a link to them down in the description, and if you're planning a studio build or a project studio or a home studio, or I mean, there's like, you can do anything nowadays. Reach out to Graham at Music City Acoustics. Like I said earlier, we worked out a partnership to make this whole thing happen, and I wanted to go through the experience of seeing what it's like to work with them, seeing the finished results, and I was really, really impressed, really shocked. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Feel free to reach out to them. They're really good people over there. I'll put their website, Graham, you'll get his email on there. They also have a YouTube channel where they share how they build different panels, and I think their goal is to just help people understand how to treat their space better. So I'll put links to all of that stuff down in the description. Go check it out. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We just passed 10,000 subscribers on this channel. I can't believe it. It's been just a few months, and I'm really, really grateful for you guys watching these videos, and I hope you're having fun in your studios working on some fun music. It's a gift to be able to do this every day. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.